The tray was heavier than it looked, but the weight wasn't the problem. It was the way Marcus Hale watched the clock, his eyes narrow and transactional. As if every second Naomi Carter spent breathing his air was a debt she hadn't yet repaid. The restaurant sat on a quiet stretch of Itaewon, busy enough to disappear into. That was why Naomi liked it. In a city of neon and noise, this corner of Seoul felt muted. She had spent 3 years perfecting the art of being a shadow, a black woman in a world that often looked through her, moving with a practiced rhythmic efficiency. She didn't want to be special. She wanted to be forgotten. Table 4 Naomi. And if you drop the tone again, you're finishing the shift in the walk-in, Marcus muttered, his voice a low grate. He didn't look at her. He looked at the smudge on her apron. To Marcus, Naomi wasn't a person with a history. She was a variable in a profit margin. Naomi didn't argue. She didn't even sigh. To react was to give him a hook to hang his ego on. She simply adjusted the tray, the porcelain clinking with a dull, expensive sound, and moved toward the floor. She had learned long ago that the most powerful thing you can hold is your own silence. But as she turned the corner toward the VIP booths, the air in the room changed. It wasn't a sound or a sudden movement. It was a drop in pressure, the kind that precedes a massive storm. Before we go any further into the shadows of Itaewon, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a moment where your past walked through the door when you least expected it? Drop a comment below and tell me. Subscribe to help us grow, because gives us the encouragement to do more. At table 4, there were 4 men. 3 of them were statues in dark wool coats, their presence occupying space with a practiced, violent indifference. But it was the man in the center who stopped the clock in Naomi's chest. Kong Junio. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't even looking at her. He was staring at a glass of sparkling water, his fingers resting lightly on the tablecloth. His hands were exactly as she remembered them, long-fingered, steady, with a small, faint scar across the left knuckle from a night in Busan that neither of them was supposed to survive. He was the son she had spent years trying to move out of the orbit of. The sea base, Naomi said, her voice steady. It was a feat of engineering, that voice. It didn't tremble. It didn't betray the fact that her blood had turned to ice. Eunji Park, Junesio's operations manager, looked up first. Eunji was sharp, her eyes like polished obsidian. She saw Naomi, and for a split second, her professional mask slipped. Recognition flickered there, a sharp, dangerous spark. Eunji knew who Naomi was. She knew what Naomi had been to the man sitting next to her before the world fell apart. Junesio didn't look up immediately. He was a man of deliberate movements. He finished the thought he was having, let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable for everyone else in the room, and then finally he raised his gaze. The impact was physical. He didn't gasp. He didn't smile. His expression remained a fortress of restraint. But his eyes, those dark analytical eyes that saw through balance sheets and bloodlines, locked onto hers. In that look, 5 years of distance evaporated. "Your water, sir," Naomi said, her tone professional, distant. "Thank you," Junesio replied. His voice was a low vibration, a sound she had heard in the dark of a safe house years ago, promising her that the world wouldn't catch them. He didn't call her by name. He didn't have to. The air between them was thick with the things they hadn't said when she walked away. She had left him not because she stopped loving him, but because loving him was a death sentence for them both. She had chosen anonymity over a gilded cage. Marcus Hale chose that moment to intervene. He had noticed the hesitation, the way the most powerful man to walk into his establishment in a decade was staring at a waitress he considered beneath his notice. "Is there a problem here?" Marcus asked, stepping into the orbit of the table. He flashed a sycophantic smile at Junesio, then turned a cold, hard look on Naomi. "Naomi, I told you to be efficient. Don't linger. Apologize to the gentleman." Naomi felt the collective intake of breath from the men in the wool coats. Eunji's hand tightened on her tablet. Junesio's gaze shifted from Naomi to Marcus. It was a slow, agonizing transition. He looked at Marcus the way a scientist looks at a specimen that has failed to yield interesting data. She was not lingering, Junio said. His voice was quieter than Marcus's, yet it filled the entire room. She was being precise. Marcus faltered, his smile flickering. Of course, Mr. Kong. I expect the highest standard from my staff. Sometimes they need a firm hand to remember their place. The silence that followed was absolute. Naomi saw Junio's thumb trace the scar on his knuckle, a sign of suppressed irritation. He hated the word place. He hated the idea that someone like Marcus, a man who bought his power in increments of rent and low wages, could speak down to anyone. Your standards, Junio said, his voice dropping an octave, seemed to be focused on the wrong things. He looked back at Naomi. For a heartbeat, the mafia boss was gone, and the man who had once promised to burn the world down for her was there. It was a plea, hidden behind a mask of iron. Why are you here? Why are you letting this man speak to you this way? Naomi didn't answer. She couldn't. She placed the final dish on the table and stepped back, her posture perfect. She was the ideal employee. She was a ghost. Will there be anything else? She asked. No, Junio said, his eyes never leaving hers. Not yet. Naomi retreated to the kitchen, the heat of the stoves a relief compared to the cold fire of Junio's presence. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Ruth, the senior waitress, was leaning against the prep station watching her. Ruth had been at the restaurant for 20 years. She saw everything. That man, Ruth whispered, nodding toward the floor. He didn't look at you like a customer looks at a waitress, Naomi. He's a client, Ruth. Nothing more, Naomi said, her hands trembling as she reached for a polishing cloth. Don't lie to a woman who's seen 1,000 lies, Ruth said gently. That man looked at you like you were the only thing in the room that wasn't made of cardboard. And that boss of ours? He's going to make you pay for that attention. He doesn't like it when his help is more interesting than he is. Naomi knew she was right. Marcus was a petty man. He thrived on the small humiliations. Seeing Naomi, the woman he mocked for her lack of ambition, being the focal point of a man like Kong Junio was an affront to his world order. The night wore on. The tension in the dining room didn't dissipate. It coiled tighter. Every time Naomi entered the floor, she felt Junio's eyes. He wasn't watching her move. He was watching her endure. He watched her take an order from a rude customer at table 6. He watched her carry a stack of plates that was too high. He watched Marcus pull her aside and hiss a correction in her ear. Junio didn't move. He didn't interfere. That was his brand of power, the restraint. He knew that if he stood up, he would destroy the life she had built. He knew that his protection was also a spotlight. But then Marcus made a mistake. A bottle of wine, a vintage that cost more than Naomi's monthly rent, was ordered for table 4. Marcus insisted on opening it himself, but he made Naomi carry the heavy silver ice bucket. As she approached, Marcus tripped, a deliberate, subtle movement of his foot meant to rattle her. The bucket tilted. Ice and freezing water splashed onto Marcus's shoes and the hem of Naomi's trousers. Marcus let out a sharp, performative cry of annoyance. Clumsy. For God's sake, Naomi, do you have any idea what these shoes cost? He grabbed her arm. It wasn't a violent grip, but it was a possessive one. The grip of a man asserting ownership over a subordinate. Go to the back. You're done for the night. And don't bother coming in tomorrow. I've had enough of your quiet attitude. Naomi didn't pull away. She stood there, wet and cold, looking at the floor. The humiliation was familiar. It was the price of being invisible. Then the sound of a chair sliding back. It wasn't a loud noise, but it silenced the entire restaurant. Kong Junio stood up. He didn't walk toward them, he simply stood. The 3 men in wool coats stood with him. Unji remained seated, but her eyes were fixed on Marcus's hand on Naomi's arm. Mr. Hale, Junio said. He sounded bored, which was when he was at his most dangerous. Marcus let go of Naomi, his face paling. I am so sorry, Mr. Kong. This won't happen again. I'll have another waitress out here immediately. I don't care about the wine, Junio said. He took a step forward. Just one. And I don't care about your shoes. He looked at Naomi. He didn't reach for her. He didn't offer a hand. He simply acknowledged her. I remember a time, Junio said, his voice echoing in the stillness, when a woman like this would have had the world at her feet. Not because of who she was with, but because of who she was. It is a tragedy to see such potential wasted in a place that doesn't understand the value of silence. Marcus was trembling now. He didn't understand the subtext, but he understood the threat. I see. If you find her service satisfactory, I can certainly reconsider. No, Naomi said. It was the first time she had spoken with her true voice all night. It wasn't the voice of a waitress. It was the voice of the woman who had once managed Junio's private accounts, the woman who had negotiated peace treaties in backrooms in Myeongdong. She looked up at Marcus. You don't need to reconsider. I'm done. She looked at Junio. The recognition was a physical ache. She had spent years running from him, from the violence and the weight of his name. But standing there, under the harsh fluorescent lights of a job that hated her, she realized that she had just traded one cage for another. I'm leaving, Naomi said to the room. We're at the halfway point. Naomi has finally broken her silence, but the cost is yet to be determined. What do you think happens when a woman who wanted to be forgotten is suddenly remembered by the most dangerous man in the city? If you're enjoying this journey into the heart of Itaewon, hit that like button. It helps the story reach more people. The back alley was cold. The rain was starting to turn to sleet, the kind of weather that gets under your skin and stays there. Naomi stood by the dumpster, her thin coat doing nothing against the wind. She had her bag, her meager final paycheck, and a sense of terrifying freedom. She heard the door open behind her. She didn't turn around. She knew the rhythm of those footsteps. You always did have a flair for the dramatic exit, Junio said. He was standing a few feet away, his hands in his pockets. He looked out of place among the trash cans and the peeling posters, a king in a graveyard. I wasn't being dramatic, Naomi said, her back still to him. I was being honest. I couldn't stay there. You shouldn't have been there to begin with, Naomi. 3 years? In a place like that? With a man like that? It was quiet, she snapped, finally turning to face him. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears and old anger. It was a life where no one looked at me and wondered whose blood was on my hands. It was a life where I didn't have to check the perimeter every time I sat down for dinner. Junio took a step closer. The restraint he had shown in the restaurant was fraying. You think I wanted that for you? You think I enjoyed watching you walk away into the dark? You let me go, Junio. We both agreed. It was the only way you could consolidate power without your rivals using me as a target. I let you go because I thought you would find peace, he said, his voice cracking slightly. I didn't think you would find this. He gestured to the alleyway, to the cheap restaurant, to her damp clothes. I found a life that was mine, Naomi said. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And now I'm just a woman in an alleyway talking to a ghost. Junio reached out, his hand hovering near her face before he caught himself. He pulled it back, the restraint returning like a suit of armor. I didn't come here to find you, Naomi. I was there for a meeting with Daniel Cho. Seeing you was an accident of the universe. A cruel one, she whispered. Perhaps. But I cannot unsee you. I cannot go back to knowing you are out here, being treated like you are nothing by men who aren't fit to breathe your air. What are you proposing, Junio? You want to bring me back? Put me in a high-rise with a security detail? We already tried that. It ended in a car bomb. Junio looked at the ground. The memory of that night, the heat, the glass, the way he had pulled her from the wreckage, hung between them. I am not the same man I was 5 years ago, he said. I don't have rivals anymore. Only employees. The silence stretched. In the distance, the sirens of Seoul wailed. I don't want your money, Naomi said. And I don't want your protection. Then what do you want? Naomi looked at him. She saw the exhaustion behind his eyes, the weight of a crown that never came off. She saw the man she had loved before he became a myth. I want to not be afraid, she said. And I want you to acknowledge that I survived without you. Junio bowed his head slightly. It was a gesture of profound respect, one he would never show his subordinates or his enemies. You did more than survive, Naomi. You disappeared. Even my best trackers couldn't find you. I thought you were dead. I was. For a while. He looked up. Come with me. Not as my ward. Not as my secret. Just for tonight. Let's talk somewhere where the floor isn't covered in ice. Naomi looked at the dark street ahead. She could walk away right now. She could find another restaurant, another Marcus, another quiet corner of the city. She could stay a shadow. Or she could step back into the light, with all the danger that entailed. Just talking, she said. Just talking, he promised. They walked to the end of the alley where a black sedan was waiting. Unji was holding the door open. She didn't say a word, but she nodded to Naomi, a silent acknowledgement of a peer. As they drove through the wet streets of Seoul, the city looked different. The neon seemed sharper, the shadows deeper. Marcus Hale, Junio said suddenly, looking out the window. He won't bother you. I've made sure he understands the cost of his management style. Naomi felt a flicker of the old fear. Nothing permanent, Junio said, and for the first time, a small, dark smile touched his lips. I simply bought the building. He'll find his new landlord to be much less forgiving than his previous one. Naomi leaned back against the leather seat. It was a classic Junio move. Power expressed through the stroke of a pen rather than the pull of a trigger. It was a reversal. The man who had tried to diminish her was now the one who was replaceable. They arrived at a private residence overlooking the Han River. It was minimalist, cold, and beautiful. You live here? She asked. I exist here, he corrected. They sat on the balcony, the river a dark ribbon below them. Junio poured 2 glasses of tea. No wine. No distractions. Why didn't you call? He asked, his voice barely audible over the wind. Even once. A blank postcard. Anything. Because if I heard your voice, I wouldn't have stayed away, Naomi said. And if I didn't stay away, you wouldn't have become what you are. You needed to be ruthless to win that war, Junio. You couldn't be ruthless with me around. I was your conscience. And you couldn't afford one. Junio closed his eyes. You were my heart. I've been living without one for a long time. Is it worth it? The power? It's a burden, he said. But it's a burden I know how to carry. The only thing I haven't learned how to carry is the silence. He looked at her, and for the first time, the distance between them felt bridgeable. I'm not coming back to that world, Junio, Naomi said firmly. I won't be a mafia boss's girlfriend. I won't be a trophy. I know, he said. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking if you would consider a partnership. I have a firm in Singapore. Legitimate. Logistics, shipping, data. It needs someone who knows how the world works, but isn't afraid of the dark. Someone I can trust with my life, because she's already saved it once. Naomi looked at the tea, the steam rising in the cold air. It was a choice. A real one. I'd be working for you. With me, he corrected. You'd be thousands of miles away. You'd have your own name. Your own life. But you wouldn't be a waitress in Itaewon. You wouldn't be invisible. Being invisible was my protection. Being powerful is better, Junio said. Trust me. Naomi looked out at the city. She thought about Marcus. She thought about the weight of the tray. She thought about the way Junio had looked at her in the restaurant, not as a victim, but as a queen in exile. I'll think about it, she said. That's all I ask. He didn't push. He didn't try to touch her. He stayed in his chair, a man of restraint until the very end. As the sun began to rise over the Han River, painting the sky in bruises of purple and gold, Naomi felt a shift in the world. The power reversal wasn't just about Marcus or Junio. It was about her. She wasn't the waitress anymore. She wasn't the girl who ran. She was Naomi Carter. And she was finally ready to be seen. The story of Naomi and Junio is just beginning, but their path is far from certain. In a world of shadows, the brightest lights are often the most dangerous. What do you think Naomi should do? Should she take the job in Singapore and reclaim her power? Or is the pull of her quiet life and soul too strong to leave behind? If this story resonated with you, please subscribe for more narratives of quiet intensity and emotional power. Your support allows me to keep telling these stories. Don't forget to check out the other videos on the channel for more tales of love, consequence, and the strength of the human spirit. Until next time, remember, silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes, it's just the calm before the storm.